That's better. Relief. Yeah. Are you getting that Twitch money? Probably eventually, yeah. I think they only send you a check when you've got when you've earned 100 quid or something. So I'm nowhere near that. So, I'm not really relying on subscriber income here. But, they sent me an affiliate link up after I'd done the long streams, and I thought, yeah, fuck it. So, you never know. Things might get really weird. I might have to turn into like a gaming streamer. Get, like a Recaro chair and all that, and a fucking stupidly expensive, pointless microphone. Tinnitus is destroying my ability to make music. Is it something you ever deal with? Yeah, it comes and goes though. Actually, good strategies for dealing with tinnitus that I've found. Listening, this is going to sound really pretentious, but it does work, right? Is listening to Computer World by Kraftwerk on decent speakers, and something about those little zap sounds, the high Q sound, them sounds, cleans my ears out, cleans my ear brain out. But apparently tinnitus is like neural feedback loop. So obviously, from how I understand it, and I might be wrong about this because it's not my field, obviously, but it's that certain hairs in your ears, certain cells die off, so that part of the spectrum drops out, and then a feedback loop gets occurs in the brain because the brain's trying really hard to amplify that frequency, and it tries so hard that I think it resonates itself into self-oscillation. But I found that not concentrating on it makes it go away, which kind of makes sense if you think about it, because I think it's attention that drives the internal brain amplification of that part of the spectrum. So, but don't listen to me. I'm not a fucking scientist, so I don't know. But yeah, Kraftwerk Computer World really helps me for some reason. Yeah. But it's just nice to listen to it anyway, isn't it? Maybe it's just that I really like listening to it, so I'm listening to it in a certain way. I don't know. How'd you deal with preset management live? It's all patter. So it's all patter now. It used to be patter and then presets. So the global stuff was a patter, and then the stuff in the modules was presets. But it got too unwieldy. I had to rebuild it all with patter. Plus, I like being able to morph them, because preset morphing is just tons of fun, in it. So it's all patterns, and then I built a thing where I can name them. So there's like a little box. You just type the name in and click enter, and it just saves it with that name. So then I have like a U menu with all the names in, and I found that loads easier to work with the numbers. So yeah, it's patter all the way down, but it's like a global patter, and then each module has its own patterns. Because the modules are loaded dynamically, I couldn't have the global patter reaching into the modules, if you know what I mean. So they all have to have their own patter storage in each module, but that's okay. What games would I stream? I don't know. It'd probably just be me playing Centipede for like 2 hours or something like that, which I'm sure would drive everyone mental. I don't know why. I just really like these kind of repetitive groove games, where you're just in a groove with it and you're just kind of doing a thing, but there's just this constant variation. I like Centipede because it's never the same game twice. You could say that for most games, really, can't you? But I don't know why Centipede's my favourite game ever. It's just so good. Hot tub stream, yeah, that's not going to happen. Partly because I don't own a hot tub, but also because why? Why would you stream yourself in a hot tub? with some like champagne and stuff, and rack out a few lines of baking soda. This is bordering on podcast half of what's on Twitch already. Is it? Does that mean I shouldn't be doing it? I don't know. Do you have the Analog series on vinyl? No, got digital, so. Keep losing the chat. Right. Hang on, I'm just looking for interesting questions now. Do you want my machine drum? I don't use it. Don't give it to me. Fucking give it to one of these buds in the chat if you're serious, which, you know, you're probably not, are you? So, just making a point. Yeah, I actually lent mine out to Mike, but I reached a bit of a ceiling with it. I was a bit amazed when the machine drum come out, because I was like, wow, this is like loads of techniques that we used to use on using different hardware, like obscure combinations of hardware that other people weren't using, but all together in like a box. It was almost like somebody had listened to our stuff and then just made a box so that you could generate what we did. So I was quite into it when it first came out, but it, you know, once I'd kind of done everything that you could do with it, I just thought, yeah, I've done that now. But yeah, I rate them though. I think they're good. And I really like that kind of kick drum modelling, whatever the Fizzmod kick drum thing that's in there. It's just so nice. Sometimes it sounds like a bit like you know, like when you tap a beach ball and it sort of goes dang, dang, that sound. I love that sound. Because I don't know how they've done that exactly. It's different to my model kicks. Mine are just membranes, so they sound a bit, you know, they sound a bit more like an actual kick drum. But theirs is fucking well strange. Have you ever heard the hum? Yeah, I've heard of the hum, and like I've seen people talking about it. The one I really liked was that Sky Trumpets thing. I don't know, I'm pretty sure it's fake because it's so fucking extreme. But it's mad sounding. It sounds like metal grating. It's like a big metal plate kind of being dragged across the floor or something. But it's got this weird, like, yeah, I love the sound of it. And I love it, like, whoever's done, if it is fake, whoever's done it's pretty good with the reverb and stuff, because it does sound a little bit like a thunder reverb, you know. It's got that kind of sort of distance, you know. But yeah, I don't really know about the hum, because the way I figure that there's probably an awful lot of low frequency shit going on anyway without a known source. I mean, it'd be pretty easy to find a bunch of potential sources for something like that, surely, unless I'm misunderstanding how it actually sounds, you know. I don't know. Maybe if you could post more info in the chat about it, I can speculate a bit better. JJOS is brilliant. I don't really use it much though. Rob's the one to ask about that, because he was all over it. I hardly used the MPC. I have got a 1000 at my house, but it was Rob's spare that after a bit he just left at mine. But I've barely used it. But he was all over it. He loved it. I didn't quite get along with the OS. There was something I didn't like about it. But I know that on paper it's great, because it's like an R8 where you can just have all your own sounds in, and the filters are quite nice because they're those Akai filters. They're quite resi and sort of, they've got a good feel to them, and he's used them really well. Some of the tracks that he did with it, like Purlins, I think are just fucking amazing, like really nice sounding, you know, beyond the composition being interesting and good. But yeah, Rob made some fucking amazing shit on the MPC. Pro Radii as well, like all the beginning beats on that he done. Just beautiful, I think. So yeah, I do rate them, but I rate them as a kind of spectator more than a user. Do your laptops communicate during live shows? Yeah, It's not side chaining, no. We've been discussing that recently. So, do we use OSC? No. We're just sending each other really basic stuff and using MIDI to send stuff back and forth. So it's mainly numbers, and I have a thing like a kind of bit extender thing that I've built that just uses several MIDI channels to give higher definition floats and stuff like that. So yeah, it's kind of bare bones, but it's quite reliable because you can use network MIDI then, which is, if you're using Thunderbolt, is super fast. Whereas OSC with its packets and stuff, it's not quite as good for timing stuff, but it would probably be better for sending floats around, but I'm not sure if it would be tight enough for what we're doing. But yeah, I've thought about using OSC and not really used it for much. I've used it in the past. Maybe I should look at it again because it's probably a bit faster now. We're on much faster ports and stuff, so I don't know how that works really with packet based stuff. Would I say Super Collider is just as powerful as Max? Apples and oranges. I mean, yeah, I probably would, yeah. How much time have I spent in it? Not much since Super Collider 2 first come out, which is when I last had a bit of a go in it. So I kind of looked at Super Collider 1 and I was like, nah, and then I think it was Rich actually who said to me like, nah, 2's a lot easier, you can just write, and then he sort of gave me some code examples for oscillators and stuff, and I was thinking, yeah, I'll have a look at it. And I did like 2, but again, like, I've moved away from doing the note on note off thing, so I guess I'd have to think about sequencing differently if I was using it, because the sort of layer between control rate and I should say, like, yeah, I don't know, it doesn't make sense to talk about Super Collider in that way, I suppose, but yeah, like in Max, like, the difference between control rate and audio rate is sort of, you know, there are a lot more ways to get across that boundary, I think, than there are in Super Collider, but I'm not experienced enough with Super Collider these days to give you a proper answer on that. But I definitely like the sound of Super Collider, it's good, and it's probably better for doing some things, but I think that since Max now has dynamic loading in polys and stuff like that, the poly object offers you a lot of flexibility that you didn't used to have, so there's been a lot of improvements in Max over the years that have brought it up to par almost with Super Collider in terms of capability, and it just becomes about which aesthetic you prefer, whether you prefer coding or whether you prefer visual programming, and I'm definitely a better visual programmer than a coder, but it doesn't help being dysgraphic really. I have issues with text and text-based stuff. It takes me a lot longer than most people to do that stuff. Yeah, the transients in Computer World, exactly, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking it was, yeah. Are you out in the sticks there? A bit. I mean, you know, there's trees and stuff, you know. This kind of thing. Trees. Much decent wildlife. I mean, we get deer, badgers, loads of squirrels, loads of birds, different birds, nutcrackers, woodpeckers, loads of different tits everywhere. Yeah, I don't know. These grey crows, I can't remember what they're called now. They're different to the ones we get in the UK. They're like grey and black. Jackdaws, a lot of corvids actually. Magpies nesting right behind the house. They've been there for generations. Same family. Pretty cool. Favourite track from Amber? Like, my mind went to Nil, like, immediately, so I want to say Nil. But there's probably, I like Pizzo, I like Montreal. How do you store and step through so many different harmonies in such a varied way? Just G1E1. I don't know. I'd have to look. I'd have to load up the old rig because that's an old rig. So I'd have to load it up and look at the what I had loaded up because it just depends on what the sequences were, which I can't tell you off the top of my head. I'm fucking shit at remembering things. Yeah, so I'll tend to send. I'll quite often I'll save scales like in series, so I'll have like a bunch of them, like some number of them, and then some length for each one, and then it'll kind of go through them like that. But I think that track might have just been one scale, so it was a case of like pushing it into different harmonic spaces with a controller. I can't remember now. All the sequences that we build are a bit different to each other, so I don't want to fuck up the answer by just guessing. I'd have to literally have to load up I was going to say I'd have to listen to it, but I don't think I'd know from listening. I mean, I make them in such a way you can't really tell. Yeah, too many versions of very similar sequences running, so, and then I'd have to just show you the patch because it sort of doesn't make much sense to try and describe how it works. But yeah, I mean, it would have been largely automatic with some user input because most of it works like that, where you need to kind of push it into a direction and then it'll kind of do a thing, you know. Did you use Atari to sequence stuff in the early days? Well, when we first started, we were using just like the 202 and the 606 to do all the sequencing. So, and we'd borrow Sims off Daz, like we borrowed an SH, I think an SH2, and then a Korg MS10, which we eventually just bought off him. And then it weren't until we got the Juno, I think. We got the R8 first, and then that had MIDI, but we weren't using it. We were using the Roland tape sync off that into the 202. So we'd use that with those bits, and then when we got the Juno, we got an Atari 1040, and then we were running C-Lab Creator on that. And then we used that as our main kind of hub sequencer for a long time. So from kind of late 93 to, no, maybe earlier, maybe like 90, when was it? When we did get the Atari, it would have been 91, 92, 92 maybe. It's hard to remember now. Yeah, probably 92. So, yeah, would have been 92. So then, yeah, so that, because before that, we'd worked in Dazzy's studio for a bit, because he used to give us keys to his studio. I had a studio above Dr. Rock in Rochdale on Drake Street. And when we met Daz, it was in the shop because he worked in Dr. Rock. So we used to go in there and be like, trying to get fucking DIN leads and stuff, you know. And Rob got talking to him about MIDI, and we'd never used MIDI. So Daz let us in his studio. This is in '89. So he'd give us keys. What I'd do is I'd go from work, because I worked in a shop in Rochdale at the time. So I used to, after work, I'd go into Dr. Rock. Daz would wait for me, hand me the keys. Then I'd go upstairs to the studio. Then Rob would arrive from his work, or sometimes I'd go and meet him at the station. And then we'd go in Daz's studio for a bit. And he had like a full MIDI studio. He had like a Bit 1, TX81Z, DX. He had and Sonic VFX SD, an Atari running a few different programs. And on the Atari was like, and he had an FZ1 as well, and an R8. It's the first time we'd used an R8. And so a lot of that gear was new to us at that point. And his Atari had like Pro 24, something else, I fucking can't remember, some other Steinberg thing, and he had C-Lab Creator, and we tried all of them, and we really liked C-Lab because it was patterns, and it was a bit more like using a drum machine, which was what we were used to. We'd only used the R8 the 606 and the 202 at that point, so we didn't really know. we didn't really understand timeline sequencing. I just found it a bit annoying. And I didn't like Cubase. He had an early Cubase. I think he had Pro 24 and Cubase, that's what he had. And I didn't really like Cubase, but I liked C-Lab Creator. So when we got our Atari, we were using C-Lab Creator for ages. And that was good. I fucking loved that program. You could do some really mad stuff in there. It had you could save grooves and put them on over MIDI tracks and do stuff like that. So, and it had the fact that you could mute channels while it was running was really good for jamming out things live. So it was a really nice sort of halfway house between a kind of live sequencer and I guess what you'd think of as like a DAW or whatever. So yeah, that was my favourite program for ages. And then we used that up until about halfway through doing Chiastic Slide. We got a Mac, and then we got Logic, because Logic, as we understood it, was the kind of new version, and so it still had the event list from C-Lab in there, which I really liked. So yeah, we used Logic for a little bit towards the end of doing Chiastic. So there's a couple of tracks using it on Chiastic, but most of Chiastic was still the Atari. And yeah, so Cipata was done on the Atari, and New Ain was done on it, and I think the tracks that we did using Logic were quite basic. So I think Recurie was done using Logic, and Pool was done using Logic. Yeah, I think the rest of it was Atari, thinking about it. Maybe Sickly was done using Logic as well. Can't remember. I think it was actually, yeah. I think Sickly was Logic. So, and that's the kind of point where we stopped using the Atari really after that. LP5 was just Logic and getting into the Logic environment. And so that was our first foray into doing kind of, I don't want to call it generative music, but this kind of slightly more automatic riffing on kind of arpeggios and kind of building our own little machines in there, building little sequences in the environments window, which I believe still exists, although I've not really used Logic much in recent years. But I think it's still in there somewhere. I think you can still do that. It's like a very rudimentary version of Max, and it was using that somebody said to me, see me using that. Guy said to me oh, you'd probably like Max, and then I sort of started to explore that world a little bit more and ended up getting Max after that. So after we'd done LP5, got Max, and then yeah, so yeah, one thing leads to another. Anyway, sorry, that was a really fucking boring autobiographical nonsense that I'm sure you're not very interested in. I stoked the Helsinki gig. I saw you in Stockholm. The emergency exit signs were covered. Will EP7 ever get a reissue? That's a good question. Yeah, we didn't think about that. Maybe we should. I don't think so, because we've got that EPs box out there, and I think that was Warp's attempt at dealing with the EPs, right? So I don't think that they're going to want to do individual EPs, given that it exists as part of that, and that you can get that at a pretty decent price at the moment still. But I don't know. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, I talked about metal bands last time, but I like Confessor, early Confessor, like Condemned, like Gorguts, early, like Obscura, yeah, I don't know, I do like Necrophagist, yeah, because I quite like the fact that a lot of it's drum machine, and I can kind of relate to that. I like Sleep Terror, even though I always get fucking slagged off by metalheads when I say that. I don't know why. I rate Sleep Terror. I like his sort of comedy aspects as well. I like his weird funk kind of beach music. I think he's quite cool. Yeah, I don't know, Cryptopsy, good, fucking hell. It's a bit hard naming loads of metal bands. I can just reel off a load of old earache bands. I mean, I had this mate I used to work with, and he was really into like Deicide and Carcass and that. So I used to listen to a bit of that back in the day. And when I was really young in school, like this lad I used to go to school with, Lee Fletcher, he were into Metallica and Megadeth and kind of 80s metal. So he used to give me tapes of that stuff, and I remember really liking Metallica first time I heard them. I was like, fucking hell, they had a different sound to everyone else, kind of chug. So, you know, I know I shouldn't be really naming Metallica in a list of metal bands I like, but I've got to be honest, you know, I was only 14, so, you know, it's fair enough, isn't it? Have you ever used any machine learning? Yeah, a bit. I mean, I fuck around with Mubu a bit. Yeah, Mubu's super interesting, actually. It's one of the more interesting ERCAM technologies, I think. It's worth an explore if you're into that kind of thing. That's all I'm going to say about that, because I don't want to have a big conversation about machine learning. I think it can be used well. I think it's all about curation, ultimately. But I think, you know, there's going to be so much shit art made as a result of machine learning existing that I know that any opinion that you have on it right now is going to date badly. It doesn't matter what your opinion is, you know. It's almost impossible to have an opinion on it, really. Is there a concept behind every Artec album? Well, if there was, I wouldn't talk about it. But there isn't, so stop asking. Can you recommend any good resources for GenExpert and anti-aliasing in Gen? No, because I had to fucking dig through loads of examples of other people's C code and try and figure out how they were doing things. Most of the techniques for doing that stuff, like Holyblep and MinBlep and EPTR and all them, are well documented online, and you can easily find examples for all of them. So I'm not going to bore you with links. Yeah. Took me fucking ages, you know. Hard work. It's fucking really hard work, but worth it. Because I've got oscillators that are different to all you lot now, so that's good. One varies in frequency from 40Hz to 125Hz roughly. Yeah, I don't know, man. I am. You know what? I don't think I've ever heard it, but I don't think I've ever not heard those frequencies. Because you know that they're just present all the time anyway, just from air moving, right? So, like, if you just look at a spectrum from a decent microphone, you're going to see a shit ton of just activity down there anyway. Because it's just always there. I don't think you can really get away from it. So I'm not sure that the hum is a thing, but willing to be proved wrong. If you can get a recording of it, that'd be really cool. Maybe it's just a brain thing, in which case I can't help you. Well, maybe I can, I don't know, eventually. Favourite tricks with Boss RSD10? Yeah, besides the obvious, like the pitch input. But even just using it as a pitch delay is quite fun. I think you can hear all that stuff on Lego Feet, to be honest, because we'd pretty much done it all by then anyway. But that original Accelera track, which was originally, it was called Ripping Circuits, that was Rob's track from '89. That was like the first time that we'd done that pitch thing. And it was really cool because, like, on the 202, if you was using the 202 as to generate the square wave for the pitch input, and then you had your sample in there, and then you started adding resonance to it, it'd just start losing it slightly and getting really good. So yeah, that was the favourite. And then, like, discovering that if you use the sample itself as the source of pitch, right, so you get that feedback loop going. And just in general, just fucking around with the square wave in different ways. The pitch input square wave, fucking around with that in different ways to try and get it to do different things. And re-triggering it as well, like at the same time as that, like using the trigger input from the 606. But you know, these are all quite obvious things, I think, if you've got one, because you probably tried all these. So I don't know beyond that. Yeah, that was our only sampler for quite a long time. Like that Destroyer of Worlds track was done just using that as a sampler, done on the 4 track. That's why it took so long. It's like all the sounds were like sampled on that and then just triggered on that. I remember reading once that the first Stereo MCs album, that 33, 45, 78 or whatever it's called, that was done with the RSD10 as its main sampler, and being totally amazed, like, how the fuck? That must have just took forever. It's quite a well produced album, that. Favourite British comedy TV series? Do I have to kind of narrow it down like this? I mean, I've got favourites that are favourites for very kind of personal reasons. I really like Armando Iannucci shows. I've got some that you might have missed that I used to really like that people didn't really check much. The Paul Merton shows, the first 2 series of Paul Mertons were really good. There were some fucking ace bits in there. I used to like Absolutely back then as well. Absolutely, you know, the Scottish series. I used to like that. There's one sketch in the first series where they're trying to get the remote control for a telly and they can't quite reach it. That I love. I still love that. I think it's amazing. There's some really good Absolutely stuff. Just fucking really silly stuff. Especially the George and Donald bits. Really good. Yeah, I like comic strip. I like, you know, there's some comic strips I really, really like. Mr. Jolly Lives Next Door, Fistful of Traveller's Checks, Gino. I mean, I probably like most of the early comic strips, but like they're the ones that I really remember fondly. Yeah, Supergrass is quite good and all. The Yob, obviously. We think, like, I don't know, I mean, I liked a lot of British comedy growing up, so I like Vic Reeves, you know. I really like the second series, like after Big Night Out, wherever it was called, like The Smell of Reeves and Mortimer or whatever, the one with like MasterChef. that was fucking amazing. Just with his head and stuff. I'm trying to think, like, I know I'm missing stuff here that's like, 15 Stories High, that's kind of underrated. Really like that. Obligatory Chris Morris and Partridge mentions, because you can't not mention them, but they're so obvious to me now that I feel like just even mentioning them there's no point. But the Day to Day was life-changing. It was just utterly amazing at the time. I mean, if I had to pick one series out of all of them, it would probably be the Day to Day, just because it was so dense and different and so fucking, it was like the good bits of RoboCop but times a million, you know, just fucking amazing. Yeah, don't know, there's too many things that I like, you know, like really is too many things. Like there's a couple of Peter Kay in that, the early the first series, that Peter Kay thing, the Ice Cream Man one, I love that. Yeah, there's like quite a bit of Peter Kay's really early stuff was amazing actually. It's a shame that he sort of gets dissed now for being a kind of observational comedian, because he was doing amazing observational comedy but in a totally different pseudo documentary format, way better than most people were doing it, you know, back then. It was just so well observed, but I guess maybe growing up in the same part of the world gives me a different view of it than a lot of people, so, you know, I can see how well observed it is. Anyway, I don't want to, God, I could just talk about comedy all day here. But maybe there's nothing wrong with that, I don't know. I feel like I'm excluding everyone who isn't British though. Any pieces of vintage or new hardware I'd like to own? Not really, I don't feel like the need to own anything in particular. I I know I should. I should be like, oh yeah, I really want a Roland System 100 or whatever it is, you know. Oh yeah, I'd really like a first generation Korg MS-20. You know, I'm not like that really. I just tend to work with what I've got. No way, Vectroid. Hello. Just want to say those Twitch streams where you sample TV commercials are mad inspiring. Oh come on, you was doing Vaporwave before I was, so I'm not going to take that from you. But thank you, you know, and respect Mac Plus. Do you guys chuckle at how long it takes for fans to get your albums? I think, yeah, I mean, sometimes it takes us ages to get it, you know what I mean? We'll do stuff and just rack it up, and then won't be for another year that we'll realise it was quite good. So, you know, I can go off things quite quickly after doing them and then get back into them later. So, you know, I don't hold it against someone. And also don't think, you know, I don't think all our stuff's that hard to get. I think some of it's quite instant. I think some of it is a bit more like they're growers, you know. And we know because they've had to grow on us before we got to a point where we think that they're releasable. So, yeah, I don't really... Reaction to Chorus Disc was quite hostile originally. Yeah, I think it probably was. I think because we'd gone from doing untilted type hyper sequence, very kind of DAW sequencing to doing these rough hardware jams, so it's not surprising. I think people kind of get an idea of what it is that you're doing, and they start to rate you on a technical level or rate you in terms of how much effort you're putting in that they can perceive. And then when they don't get that from your next release, they'll be like, oh, this thing is missing. But I don't really do that with music. I tend to get more excited about what's there than what isn't there, because there's obviously a lot less there than isn't there. You can always talk about what isn't there with music, do you know what I mean? You could say like, oh, didn't like that metal album because there weren't enough panpipes in it. It's like, well, yeah, but you know, there's loads of things that aren't there, isn't there? You know what I mean? There's no opera singers either, or, you know, whatever, mouth organs or whatever it is that's not on that album, you know what I mean? It's just, so I don't find that very useful. But I get that other people might expect something from you and then you don't give it to them, and then they're like, oh, well, I haven't got the thing that I thought I was going to get. But, you know, yeah, I don't think we're making stuff in that way though, so it's not a competition really. It's not like we have to have a load of boxes ticked for things that are there, if you know what I mean. Just whether you're vibing off it really, innit? So my phone's getting too hot. It's going to start complaining in a minute. I was just blasting piezo really loud. Thanks. No, I like you guys as much as RDJ. Thank you. That's high praise indeed. Fucking hell, I'm so much behind in the chat again. This always happens because I'm being too good trying to answer all these. Somebody's highlighted their message. Right, okay. I think I might just have a policy of not reading the ones that I highlighted. Original copy of Confield I got off Soulseek was missing parallel triangle. Oh yeah. Well, that's what you get for downloading albums on Soulseek. What do you see as the next big technological step in music creation? How long have I got to think about this? Because it might take me 5 or 10 minutes, so... I don't know. Something that we're doing, probably. Do you like recent Frusciante stuff? I don't really know his stuff very well, but I believe he's a fan of ours, so that I do appreciate that. I used to see, when I was working in the shop, because we had tellies in the shop, because it sold tellies, because it was that kind of shop. We used to have MTV on a lot, and I used to see Chili Peppers on there, and I used to think, yeah, it's not bad, this. Like, it weren't really the kind of thing I'd go out my way to check, but I like the funk and the drums and the movement in it. So there was some elements of it that I could get behind. So it was quite refreshing to read that he was a fan of ours. But other than that, I don't know, because I'm just not familiar enough with that kind of stuff. So I'm in a bit of a bubble these days in general, so that doesn't help. But I should probably just check out a load of their stuff, and then I'd have more of an opinion on what I think of his having an opinion. I don't really know. But obviously it's like, it's super humbling, because he's really gone out of his way to shine a light on us, and I do really appreciate that. So, yeah, thanks, basically. Is it disappointing how predictable and safe most music is? Or where mainstream internet culture went? That's a big question, isn't it? Bloody hell, internet culture. So we're going to talk about the early days and when everyone were goons, and when beta first started out, and then what happened after that. Don't think I really need to. I think you all know the history of the internet, right? I mean, you don't need me to give you a kind of shit version of that. It's weird seeing people discovering shit posting on Twitter and thinking it's a new thing. You know what I mean? Because we used to shit post on Usenet. I was shit posting when these kids were zygotes. Fucking hell. So that's funny. But it was bound to end up like this. I think what bugs me the most is all the manipulation, really, and all the kind of political stuff gets me down a bit. Because I don't really enjoy it on socials anymore. I think it's just a lot of outrage and people getting upset about things without really asking why they're so upset. I think people are quite happy to inherit opinions, and I think, I believe that the reason conspiracy theories are so popular is because they confirm pre-existing beliefs, and people want to be spoon-fed a reason for their kind of prejudice a lot of the time, and there's other people who want to capitalise on that, and I don't like that. Do I think music's predictable and safe? I mean, this is a hard one, because I've since being a kid, I've seen group behaviour as something that excludes me, and I don't really understand it a lot of the time if lots of people are saying and doing the same thing. So I don't want to criticise people for wanting to be in the group and wanting to get the approval of the group. That's something that is important to them, and they're wired differently to me. So I can't criticise people for being like that, but I'm not like that myself. So I'm not coming at it from the angle of being critical. I think I was when I was younger, and I didn't really understand as well how the world works. I used to think, why is everything so shit? And now I realise that it's because everybody wants to fit in. So I'm not disappointed by how predictable and safe most music is. No, I'm not. But it's just the way it is. It's always going to be like that. I think it's always been like that as well. So I thought things would get more interesting, fearless, based on early iterations of the internet. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think identity is a big part of this, right? So, because I think early on, on the internet, identity was more diffuse, and you could fuck around with your identity and experiment with different identities to some extent, right? You weren't tied to your real name and your job and your fucking location and all your real friends, and that wasn't how the internet worked at all. So, and being free from that was really liberating for a lot of people, especially weirdos like me, and we've lost that to some extent, and where it does exist, it's just they're hellholes now. They didn't used to be, but they kind of become that, really. Because it just offers you free license to be a cunt all the time, and that's not going to be good. If you've got a lot of people who've got that urge in one place, things are going to be a bit weird. But for a while it was good. While identity was diffuse and people were creative, and trolling was creative, everything was creative, memes were creative, It's not like that so much now. Memes are just shitty reaction images that you download from a reaction images website. So, the fuck is that? You know. Just the way the words change as well, like just the word trolling, the way that changed over time, and the way that the word meme now just means like a shit picture of something, you know. Anyway, I'm not an expert on internet culture, so, you know, just an average bloke who's been on the internet for way too fucking long. And I'm not that average. I don't even know if I'm an actual bloke, to be honest. I don't know what the fuck I am. So, every time I hear about Logic, I start to wonder if I made the wrong move going all in on Ableton. Nah, like, you know, depends on what you're doing and how you want to do it. But yeah, I like Logic better. I'd use Logic. If I could run max patches in Logic, I'd use Logic. Like, and you know, 9 times out of 10. There's a lot of stuff I can't do in Ableton that I find just totally infuriating, like selecting stuff. The fact that it doesn't have it, like if you want to just arbitrarily select a number of regions in your tune and move them, but they're not contiguous, fucking good luck with that. Can't. Like, and I've complained to them about it, and they said, "Oh, well, that code's so old, it's just going to be very hard to update it now." And I thought, well, fuck, you know. But, you know, there's things about Ableton that are really good. The workflow's really fast. The groups thing is phenomenal. It's really powerful. Being able to have racks of different synths in the same instrument is really cool. So there's things about Ableton I think are amazing. And there's other things that I think are really weirdly babyish, and I don't understand their choices. So, like, it just depends. You would find, I think, if you'd grown up using Ableton and you then went to use Logic, you would find it laborious to do some very basic stuff that you got used to having in Ableton, and vice versa. So, you know, apples and oranges, really. Got to stop saying apples and oranges. Right. There are way too many questions about fug shaking. I do appreciate them, though. Do I have any tips for people interested in doing visual art with visual programming tools these days? Nah, I'm not the man to ask about this. I believe VVVV is very good, and I believe processing is very good. I don't use either of them. So, I'm not. Can't see shit. Right. Am I still in contact with Tortoise? No, you know, it'd be good to be, though. I always really liked John and Bundy. I think they're fucking good. I was more in touch with Casey for a little while. Casey Rice. He's their mate. But I ain't seen him for ages either. Fucking flaking here. But, yeah, Tortoise are good. Like, I don't know what happened with Tortoise, actually. I don't know where they've gone. Are they still doing stuff? I'm shit at keeping up with stuff. Fave Ween albums. Yeah, I mean, probably Pure Guava, because it was like my introduction to him. So, and at the time I was just pure electronic listening, so a lot of the kind of drum machiney ones were a bit of a way in. And I liked how homemade it was, and it was obviously like thrown together. But yeah, I got more into the pod a bit later. And Mollusk is good, but it's sort of it's more of a concept album, I think. But it's good. I mean, I really like Buckingham Green, but I like the demo of it more than I like the version on the album, actually. The really long extended demo version of it, I think, is amazing. And I like them when they're a bit rougher and not so overproduced. I got the Country Greats album, and I thought it was fucking hilarious, but also a bit like it had a short shelf life for me, just because I'm not really into that kind of music. But I thought it was such an anal project to do. But in general, yeah, I'm a big Ween fan. I really like Ween. and I seen them live in the 90s, and they were just fucking, I think they were so off their heads, they could barely like keep their faces in a kind of rational, they were like this, but they might have just been putting it on. But yeah, a mate of mine used to tour manage him a bit, this guy Noel, and he knows him pretty well. But yeah, big Ween fan. Like, I love how anal it is, and I love how careful they are, and how well they can nail other artists' vibes without actually doing an impersonation of them, you know what I mean? So, and yeah, dodgy subject matter and all that just makes it a little bit more fun, because it's so absurd. It just becomes really absurd that you're listening to a song about whatever it is, you know, shit or fucking incest or whatever it is, you know, child abuse. They're not good topics to make songs about, but they somehow managed to make it not uncomfortable. Yeah, I don't know, it's perverse as fuck, Ween, and I think you have to have quite a twisted sense of humour to enjoy it, really. Musically as well as kind of thematically, you know. Have I thought about things like Patreon or Bandcamp subscription? No. Maybe I would if I didn't have any money. I don't know. Do alright. I mean, we do pretty well off gigs and stuff, so. Is there a major shift in your methodology around the transition from Untilted to Choristis? What was going on behind the scenes? Yeah, I mean, fucking hell. A lot of stuff for me. I mean, my dad died in 2004, so that was a blow, and that sent me off on a weird spiral of not knowing where the fuck I was or who I was, and then a lot of stuff that my family had kept from me came out, and then we toured, and then I'm not going to talk about any of that stuff, so don't ask. And then me and Chantel split up 2005, and then I moved to Manchester, and I hardly had a studio for ages because we were just doing gigs for money. So for about 3 years I didn't really have a studio. I just had kind of a live setup on a desk in a room, and my speakers and a mixer, and I was building the studio up slowly while we were doing that. So Choristis is the sort of sound of me putting my studio back together, plus a few tracks that I did on my laptop in Renoise sort of mixed in there. So like Fall 3, Fall 4, WNSN, Rail, they're all Renoise tracks. And then there's a bunch of like Rob's MPC things, you know, Rob was doing like MPC tracks. And then, yeah, I don't know, like, that was a bit fierce. So, yeah, I don't know, like, bit of a mixed bag, really, of things happening, you know what I mean? But I was enjoying being in Manchester in my new space and feeling quite free and liberated, and not really wanting to work with DAWs, because I felt like I'd reached a bit of a ceiling with that, and I didn't really want to go much further into it. I started getting a bit bored with timeline sequencing, started just wanting to do things in the room and have a bit more of a live vibe to them, which was a bit more like a return to roots, which is the kind of thing you do when you've just split up with your wife that you've been with for 10 years, you know what I mean? So in a lot of ways I was returning to my roots, really, you know, going back up to Manchester and then doing all that. I hope that offers some understandable context for that. Were you a fan of Captain Beefheart when you put Magic Band on at ATP? Yeah, of course. I wouldn't have put them on otherwise. But that Mirrorman Sessions has been a favourite for a long time. And I really like John French. I really like his drumming. But I wasn't expecting him to get on stage and start singing like Beefheart. That was weird. But, okay, that's what you want to do. You're John French. It's fine, you know. I mean, he did most of it. If you know, you know. And yeah, it was just such inventive music. Just amazing. And his drumming is fucking brilliant. It's just amazing. Amazing drummer. One of my, you know, all-time favourite drummers. Just beautiful. Just amazing sense of timing, and his micro timing and his groove, and the way that he's decided to flop his grooves over slowly over the course of this Like these jams from Mirrorman were like 15-minute jams where the loop's just changing slowly and kind of, it's just right up my street. I love that shit. But so much funk, you know. Yeah, I think he really gets it. So yeah, we're a huge fan of theirs. Huge fan. Twitch streams was a good way of embracing internet media to release your music. Thought about doing this more. I mean, to be fair, I mean, that happened kind of organically. It wasn't like I had the thought to do it. It was just that I was doing the Mixlr streaming, and we've been doing streaming for as long as it's been possible to do streaming, because obviously coming from a pirate radio background makes you want to do, you know, it's just, we're just into doing broadcasting in general. We've always been into it. And yeah, as soon as it was possible to do decent radio streaming, we were doing it. At first we were using like, what was it called now? I can't even remember what it was called. People still use it as well. You can stream from it on your computer. I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about. But yeah, we basically, you'd be streaming directly from your machine, so not via a server, and then you know, so you'd have like all kinds of overhead bandwidth issues with that, but it was fun for a while. And then actually I think Alexi still uses that shit, because I've seen his streams are like that same platform. And then yeah, I started using Ustream, and then for a bit when that first came out, and then yeah, and then Mixlr. So like after a few weeks of doing that lockdown streaming, it got to a point where I was thinking, well, fuck it. It was Phil asked if we'd do some video streaming on Twitch. You've had to stream my fucking obscure experimental film and video collection and video art, because I'm quite into video art on the quiet. I don't talk about it much, but I've been for a long time. So he wanted me to do that, so I went on Twitch and started streaming that shit, and then that got a bit boring, and then I started playing films, and then people were saying to me, yo, you're gonna get cancelled off here if you don't calm down with the copyright strike. So I thought, okay. So then I thought, well, maybe I'll just stream some of this shit jitter stuff that I mess with sometimes. So, and it just came out of that, if you know what I mean. So yeah, it wasn't a big decision to get on this cool platform and do it. It was just that I knew that you could stream video on Twitch, and you'd probably get away without a strike if you just did it on the DL, you know, if you only had a few people listening. But it started to get a bit out of hand, so, and then it wound down again, and then I got bored, so that was that. You recommend a good cheap FM synth? You mean a hardware synth? I don't know anymore. I'm so out the loop. You just ask any other person than me, because I just use Max for everything now. I mean, cheap FM synth for me would be Max, because I won't have to buy anything. I just build one. So I'm desperate to leave the UK. Can I be your gardener? I'll live in your shed. We don't need a gardener, you know. But yeah, I mean, like, if you want to leave the UK, just leave the UK. It's surely not that difficult, you know. It is weird not living in the UK for a while. It's different out here, you know, not in a bad way, but just very different. Did you ever hear any Norwegian folk music? Only bits of, like, I mean, no, not really, no, because I wouldn't call it Norwegian. Is that an owl on the door? Yes, it is. Well spotted. For those interpersonal questions, what one says about one's self is the opposite of truth. So invert the statements. What? trying to work out what you mean by that. But yeah, I mean, I think it's more what you want other people to think, right? I mean, it's not necessarily not true. You might just have identified the one thing that you think is worth saying, so you might be saying that. So yeah, I don't buy that. It's the opposite of the truth. You know, I'm not. This isn't like some KGB propaganda channel. Do you like FSOL's new stuff? Not heard much of their new stuff actually for a bit. I've got that Stacker out, that Humanoid album, on Detuned. Whenever it was, a couple of years ago, it was really good. I thought it was really, really good. Yeah, so I like that a lot. But I haven't heard any other FSOL bits for a bit. I've just been keeping up with that stuff because that's more on my tip really. What are we talking about reverse polarity for, by the way? I don't know what that's about. Do you have separate tasks when performing live, or do you both deal with everything? Yeah, we do have separate tasks. So we got 2 rigs running concurrently, synced, and we're running different stuff on each one. So just depending on what bits we're running. So yeah, different stuff. But when you say tasks, I don't know what you mean exactly. Because obviously, like, I suppose you could break down the music into constituent elements and say, oh, this is a rhythm bit and this is a melody, and who does the rhythm and who does the melodies. In which case, you know, it's just, yeah, we do deal with everything because both of us are working with all kinds of different material. But it's sort of like, you know, it fits together, if you like different things that fit together. How much hard drive space do you have? Just quite a bit, because hard drives are quite cheap now, so you know, you can get like a 12 terabyte drive for a few £100, so you know, sky's the limit really. The music doesn't take up much space, does it? It's not like video. So do you have an organisation principle for all your files? Yeah, I mean, I tend to label them with stuff, but you know, you can tag stuff in macOS, so you can just tag everything with multiple tags. So yeah, I use that quite a bit. And yeah, that's it really. Don't know what to say about that. You don't have to do a lot of organising because you can usually just derive a lot from dates. And because I've got like, so the system or the rig or whatever, all the folder of patches is sort of saved as a zip every time there's a modification. So I can easily find which version of the rig I was using for the track, because the track's creation date will be just part of the metadata for the track. So it's quite easy to get through it and figure out what's what. Do you have a lot of old files from the 90s, or do you let them disappear whatever over time? Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's different formats. So I've got them, like I've got all the ASR discs and I've got all the DATs, but things decay and stop working after a while. So, and I don't maintain it very well. Rob's a bit better at maintaining his kind of archive than I am. I'm not that concerned with it. So, you know, if things die, they die. It's just part of the story of how things went. So I quite like that. I like memory being imperfect. I don't feel the need to record everything. I don't go around with a camera taking pictures of things and stuff. I like not quite being able to remember things. Yeah, I like that better. Aren't you using computers like Mac MSP? Yeah, we are. I use auto files to fertilise the earth. Yes, that's quite a novel approach. Why doesn't Bob make an AMA like you? Is he shy? No, he's just doing family stuff. He's busy all the time. He's busy doing patching and tracks and trying to keep up with my shit and doing bits for the live set. I'm sure you could coax him on here though. I don't think it'd be that hard. He's not that shy. He's just a bit I think maybe he just wouldn't enjoy it as much. Don't know. He's not really shy. I think he'd probably just see a lot of these questions and be like, oh, fuck off. Have you watched Limmy's show? Yeah, I like Limmy's show. Fucking hell, I didn't mention Limmy, did I? When I was talking about comedy. Yeah, Limmy's top. Fucking hell. How can you not like Limmy? Yeah, really creative, I think. And his characters are brilliant. Like, just really good. 3D as fuck. Even the ones that only appear in like one sketch are just fucking really good. They're like super 3D and real. They're like real people. So I think he's really good like that. And it's a shame he isn't doing more TV stuff or sketches or whatever, you know, because I think he's really good at playing different people. So I love Dee Dee. I think he's brilliant. He's so real and kind of identifiable. I know so many people like that. But even that Benny Harvey sketch, like, where they're both wigging out to that Aha track, I just recognise it. Totally recognise it. It's mad. Like, I think it's weird, Limmy. He manages to pull things out of me unconscious that they're almost like memories. You know, it's brilliant. There's one at a party where someone's like totally off their head and they're just talking to some other bloke, and the other bloke's just going on about people in soap operas. Oh, fucking hell. That's so good. Yeah, there's some shit in Limmy's stuff that's just nailed something. I don't even know where he gets it from. Well, obviously he gets it from his life, you know. I don't know why I'm saying that's silly. It's just good that he has the same sort of thoughts as I do about some things. Yeah, really good. I really rate him. I think he's really good. Reeves and Mortimer, the nightclub sketches, fucking hell, yeah. The Reeves and Mortimer, right, the ones from, I think, because you said Big Night Out, but I assumed then when I read that, I thought you meant the ones with fucking, what's his name? What's his fucking name now? Well, they've got the one bloke who's grown up in Hong Kong and he talks with a Chinese accent. And then you got the other, the guy who's like, that guy, what's he called now? The guy who manages that band, and the band are called like Mandate, and they're singing about salmon and stuff. Yeah, that's just amazing shit now. Okay, so you mentioned being neurodivergent during the last AMA. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go on about this too much, so I've got to rub my eye. Fucking cry laughing, thinking about Vic Reeves. Yeah, so any tips on how to get through the day routines, getting stuff done? Thanks a lot. I can't start giving out CBT tricks and all that, because it's just different for everyone, and I'd never do that. I think you just got to like work with somebody who understands you, really. I think that's the key thing. If you can find somebody to work with who understands you. I don't mean work. I mean, if you want to work on strategies for coping and stuff. Don't let it get you down is the main thing. I mean, I was lucky, right? Because I didn't know. For a long time, I didn't know. And I had the validation of the world. So I kind of had an outlet from quite an early age. And I was lucky that, because I had the typical thing of being advanced in primary school and then getting into middle school and then suddenly hitting a bit of a brick wall academically. So I had really good scores until I was about 11. I was like top of the school, more or less. And then I was 11, and then I went to middle school, and then things got suddenly quite difficult. But I also had music and doing tapes and doing editing, and there was a point to me kind of being obsessive, and suddenly my obsession got diverted into all this electro and doing pause button tapes and all that kind of stuff, and then buying a sampler. And I was getting approval from my mates in school, because electro, so this is like 83, 84, when electro was big and I started first doing tapes, suddenly people were talking about me as a DJ in school. They were saying, oh, he's a fucking DJ. And that was really good for my ego. And it didn't matter that I was different to them suddenly. It didn't matter that I was outside the group, because I was like getting respect for what I'd produced when I was outside the group, if you know what I mean. So it really helped me to have that. And it's probably why I clung onto it so tightly for so long and was so obsessed with making it work, you know. So yeah, and I didn't know until much later that, you know, Asperger's and HFA, whatever, they're not like, it's not necessarily like a diagnosis that you have to worry about. It's only if it's affected your life in a negative way. So I didn't really need to know because there wasn't really anything I needed to tweak. And by the time I found out about it, I'd learned enough just through trial and error and experience, learned enough strategies for dealing with people and social dynamics. And I'm quite good at picking emotions up in people. It's not like I'm insensitive to that stuff. It's just that I quite often don't know how to behave in response because those things aren't hard coded in me. So I don't know. I find some types of social interaction easier than others. I find it much easier to deal with somebody in like a one-on-one than dealing with a large group of people. But if I know the group of people really well, I'm quite good. But if I don't know them really well, I tend to go quite quiet and I just go into lurk mode, basically. I just kind of observe people. So it all depends really on what the setting is in terms of how I respond. And, you know, my strategies are very personal. I suppose they're not really worth sharing because they're, you know, I'm coming at it from such a weird angle, being a musician / artist / whatever I am. You know, that I think that my advice probably isn't that useful to somebody who isn't doing that, you know. But I don't know, maybe it would be. I'd need to really discuss individual situations and ways that I would deal with him if I was in him, you know, for it to be any use. I can't just kind of give out general advice like that. But I do really appreciate that people, I appreciate that people appreciate me talking about it, but I don't really know how to talk about it. And there's been a lot of situations where I've been in interviews and I've brought it up and they've quickly changed the subject. They don't want me to discuss this in interviews. Journalists see it as a little bit of an awkward subject area. It's a bit like if I started to discuss some kind of personal health problem. You know, they don't like talking about this stuff. A lot of people are kind of repulsed by anything that they perceive as a disability, which is a shame, really, because I don't perceive it as a disability at all, you know, or a kind of superpower. You know, I'm not on that tip either with it. You know, I just think it's all about difference and people being different. I don't like a lot of this kind of new identity politics in that you're supposed to join some group and identify with that group and wave the flag for that group. That's just another type of group behaviour to me, and I can't really identify with that either. So, you know, I find certain cultural phenomena a little bit difficult to engage with personally, and that's become a little bit more of an awkward thing as I've got older, because people are so fucking fixated on these prefabricated identities. You know, I don't like that. Anyway, God, that was a lot of talking. Sorry. The day-to-day where Morris turns away from an organ after the intro, yeah. On the Hour as well, like, if you'd listened to On the Hour, before the day-to-day there was On the Hour on the radio, because that was where we first caught it. So I remember playing Sonic 2 and listening to On the Hour and just thinking, what the hell's going on? It was like Radio 4 had just folded up. It was fucking amazing. There was some bits in On the Hour. I remember the one bit that really sticks in my mind when I was listening to it with the Pips before the news. So it went beep, 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 and it just did it for ages, and then it went into this melody or something. I just remember thinking, fucking hell, this is amazing. Like, I love Iannucci's edit, like radio edit stuff, because he does a lot of stuff that's on the same sort of tip as Kenny Everett's radio stuff, which I also really rated as a kid. And my dad had some mate in London who was one of the van guys, because my dad was in van clubs when I was a kid. They used to customise vans and all that, and some of his mates were from London, and they used to have these tapes of these mad edits that Kenny Everett used to do that had a huge impact on me as a kid. And there's bits of Iannucci's stuff that's like that, where he's done all these weird edits that are in the data. There's not really in the day to. There's a couple of bits in the day to day that I like that. That bit where it goes like collecting stamps. That bit. That's like that kind of humour. It's just really obscure, like approach to editing, and kind of. Yeah, I love that humour. It's so over the top and weird. It's so different. But yeah. Anyway, sorry. Do you think it was funny how there was one guy on Reddit who thought the anal CDR was fake, or just insulting that he didn't believe that you could have tracks that were a bit sketchy or less serious? I mean, every time there's this fake thing, right? So if there's a possibility that something's fake and people say, oh, Tekka would never do anything this shit. And then they're like, oh, it's real. Oh, well. And then there's this idea that, you know, it's all about reputation. I mean, I'm kind of down with that. I mean, I kind of think, well, if you should just approach it on its own merits. If it didn't have our identity associated with it, what would you feel about it? Would you be into it or not? I think that really is the question, you know what I mean, whether you like something. But you might be looking for that essence of somebody within the track and trying to figure out if something's in. Like, I remember Steinvord thinking for ages that must be Richard, but I didn't know, and I still don't know who that is really. But when I heard it, I was thinking, yeah, it must be him. There's just so much of his essence in there. But you never know if somebody's just cloning him, because there's a lot of kind of Aphex tribute acts out there, isn't there? You know what I mean? So, and some people it's harder to do than others. Like, I don't think you could clone Luke Vibert really, because he's got a very particular approach to things, but it's just not that easy to boil down into constituent parts and say, this is what makes a Luke Vibert track sound like Luke Vibert, if you know what I mean. It's very difficult to emulate it. Whereas I think somebody like Rich, you can probably do it a bit easier with, because you could just buy the same gear and do the same sorts of tunings and same type of patterns. But then there's some point at which you can slightly tell a difference. And I think those tracks, those guest comp things, they're a bit diffuse because there's a few different people on them. So depending on who's there, there's different vibes to them. So yeah, I don't know, it just depends on I mean, it's a bit different with them tracks, because I don't really take it personal if somebody thinks that they don't sound like Autechre, because they shouldn't really, because they're not Autechre. So especially like this penultimate track, which just doesn't sound like anything that we would ever do, you know what I mean? So, but at the same time, yeah, like, I think the old question of whether a fake sounds like the actual artist is a bit weird for a band like us, because we quite often don't sound like ourselves, or, you know, we do something that's a bit, you know, different or fresh for us or whatever. So, have you used DALL-E 2? No, I'm on the list though. We'll see. The problem is I didn't tell him I was a fucking tech journalist or whatever, so I'll probably get it a year after everybody else gets it. So, but yeah, it's weird because I'd show you my alt Reddit account, like, where I post all my DALL-E shit. And some of them are pure comedy, but like, I'm not going to reveal any of my Reddit accounts to you, so you're going to have to just guess at who I am on there. Sorry about that. But yeah, you probably see me on one of the DALL-E subs spamming fucking bullshit images. The irony of Soulseek that a lot of electronic music artists were on there early on. Yeah, me included, you know. And Audio Galaxy as well. You know. Props for keeping the band together for 3 decades. Any wisdoms? Not really, just don't be a dick. You know. In general, you know. What's your opinion on Wendy Carlos? Phenomenal talent, just absolutely absurdly respectable person and human and a lovely person. And it's such a shame she seems to be hiding lately, and I wish she wouldn't do that. Especially now, you know. yeah, I don't want to go on about that, but you know what I mean, don't you? So yeah, it's a shame, but like, yeah, just a phenomenal talent, and just like so many things to learn from Wendy Carlos in general. And I know, you can listen to it and think, well, it's just classical music made on a synth, but it's done so well, and it's done with such rigor and a kind of and fascination, and it's just, and there was so much trial and error in Wendy Carlos. You can hear it, you know, so many happy accidents and capitalizing on those, and there's just so much to learn in terms of approach from the way she's done stuff. That, yeah, I think she was absolutely brilliant, just amazing, basically. Um, but I mean, well discussed. Um, Time steps is mint. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Also the gamelan stuff that she tried to do is really convincing. And I've played that alongside other gamelan tracks, and people haven't noticed that it's synths. People who are familiar with gamelan music. So yeah, it's fun. Okay, have you read The Free Body Problem? Yeah, you know what? I got halfway through book 2 and kind of sloped off, and I still need to get it finished. But there's some ideas I like in it, and some of it I think, that doesn't really make sense. But maybe it comes together a bit more in the third book. I'm hoping it does. I kind of need to get back into it. I had this with Southern Reach trilogy and all. I got halfway through book 2 and was like, where the fuck is this going now? Like, and then it really came together. Book 3 was like, wow, fuck, So yeah, I probably need to get back into Free Body Problem. I found there was something about it that was bugging me. Book 2, it started to bug me a little bit, but I'd probably just need to read through the bits that are bugging me, and it'll start to make more sense. What Norwegian food do you enjoy the most? So I have this thing for like buying lumper and like just combining them with the wrong things. So like those little tins of mackerel in tomato sauce, slapping that on lumper and eating that and letting it go through the holes a little bit. Or like fried eggs on lumper. And I keep getting told off for putting the wrong things on lumper, but I love it. But like straight up Norwegian food that I like is probably like hot dogs on lumper, and that weird mustard that everyone eats here, and fucking brown cheese. Brown cheese is ace, like totally unknown in the UK. And yeah, that company Marud, or however you pronounce it, their peanuts are like fucking amazing. They're like the best peanuts I've ever had. I really like peanuts, but their peanuts are like particularly well roasted, like amazing. And yeah, there's some weird things like Christmas dinner is like completely different to the UK. And that thing, can't remember what it's called, where it's like, the first time I had it I wasn't sure. It's like cabbages and sheep, and it's boiled. I can't remember what it's called now, but I really like that now. The first time I had it I wasn't sure, and then the second time I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like the cabbage had loads of flavour and stuff, and it just was amazing. So yeah, I think Norwegian cooking's quite basic in some ways. Oh, and them little balls, them little reindeer meat ball things that you get in them fucking weird packets that are like something from the 70s. I think it's called Vilty now, but it used to be called something else. I love them shits. They're fucking really good. They're like something that I would have eaten when I was a kid. And I'm sure when I eat them, I get a weird nostalgia off it. But I don't know why, because obviously we didn't have that in the UK. So yeah, I don't know. There's a few weird Norwegian things I like, and fiskegruteng or whatever it's called. The fish. That's like a weird 70. Where it's like fucking macaroni and fish and potato. Like it's so weird. That's like a 70s dish, but it's really good as well. That gives me weird nostalgia at all, especially with a bit of black pepper on it. It's fucking really nice. So yeah, I like these weird nostalgia foods it's like nostalgia for a time I didn't personally experience. Underrated stereo widening techniques. Yeah, this is Rob's blag. He does a lot of this stuff. Yeah, I mean, just in general, just like there's so many things you can do like this, but like, there's a load of unknown ones. So like, one is like using denoising, but then taking the inverse and then processing that and knocking one channel out of phase, or knocking both channels slightly out of phase with the mono, which is so you're just taking the noise basically and widening the noise effectively, and then mixing that back in. I like doing shit like that. But yeah, I mean, in general, weird matrix mixing, I'm all over it. Because the first person I saw doing interesting mixing like that was this lad Paul. He used to knock about with a Reflex lot. He used to be into reggae. I remember being round at his, and he was playing reggae records through a 4-track. So he had like, the record was playing into the 4-track, but then what he'd done was he had on each channel, he had like on one channel he just had the bass, and then on another channel he had the same record playing, but just the mids and the bass and the treble turned down, and then on the other channel he had the highs. So he had these 3 faders for each EQ band, and he was sending them to different effects. And I was like, whoa, fucking hell, that's really nice. So yeah, I've just taken that to so many places over the years, like that method of thinking about splitting an original stereo signal up into multiple parts and then recombining it again later and doing slightly different processing on each part, depending on how you're splitting it up. So splitting it up using loads of different methods, and then, doing different types of processing on them. So that just opens mixing right up, doing that kind of stuff. So yeah, in general, that. Meshuggah, yeah, I fucking forgot to mention them when I was talking about metal, but that's probably because they're not strictly metal. But yeah, I really rate them. There's a kind of, it's very mechanised, and obviously it appeals to me because it's mostly about the rhythm. So yeah, I do really rate them. I think they're really good. But I can only really get through one album at a time because it gets a bit. It tires my earbrain out. Oh, there's a car, by the way. You're gonna have to wait for the car to disappear now. God, I'm so far behind in the chat. I'm just reading how far behind I am. Sasha Gray's musical career. I don't know anything about Sasha Gray's musical career. Oh, God. I'm not interested in David Tibet at all. I have no... Don't care. Edgemeister. Yeah, Kybris was amazing. Fucking hell. Gamer. Must have owned a Specky. Yeah, no, actually, because my dad used to fit burglar alarms, and he was a bit of a tech geek, electronics geek. So, and engineering in general, he liked cars, and he liked putting little weird boxes together. And he didn't like the Specky. I remember the Specky coming out, and my dad was like, "No, don't like it, shit." And he had all these reasons for not liking it. And then the BBC came out, and he was like, "Yeah, Acorn of the future." And he made us get a BBC, which meant I had a fucking BBC, which was good for Elite, but, for most other games, Chucky Egg and, Manic Miner, decent port of Manic Miner on there. But a lot of other games were shit on there. I had GR Kung Fu, and then I had just tons of adventure games that I used to hack. So yeah, I was sort of into computers, but in a bit of a weird way. But it was good because obviously school got BBC, so then I knew what I was doing and I was a bit ahead of the pack. But in any other context, it was shit because you got on your mate's house and all my mates were game swapping and sharing and copying stuff. And yeah, God, I've got some funny stories from back then, but they're a bit long. But yeah. So, and I had mates with VIC-20s, mates with 64s, mates with Spectrums, And I was the one weird kid who had a BBC. So, but you know, it was because my dad thought it was a superior computer, and he was right, but it just wasn't that common. You know what I mean? So, it's what happens when your dad's into fucking computers, isn't it? Can you enjoy normal music anymore? What the fuck is normal music? Yeah, of course I can. Like, I mean, I think we make normal music, don't we? I think it's pretty normal. Fuck, I haven't drunk this coffee at all. This coffee's so good. Flasks. That's my recommendation for today. Fucking flasks. Worried about spilling drinks on your computer? Worry no more. Buy a fucking flask. Flasks, in general. Hot coffee all day. Best invention ever. Fuck, I nearly dropped you then. Too much coffee. Right, so, can't recall whether this is true or not, but that you were one of the few people complained about the Selected Ambient Works 8592 pre-mastering process from what the fuck? That's not true at all. What the fuck? Where did that come from? You were one of the few people complained about the Selected Ambient Works. No, that's not right. I know what that is. That's rich. That's right. So I remember this conversation. This is where my memory is coming into play now. So, from what I remember, and I might be wrong, but in '95 I had a conversation with Rich about how I'd heard that he used to master his tracks to long play DATs. And I remember saying to him, like, really? Do you really do that? Because I was thinking, wow, you must have really done a lot of stuff. Like, I was quite impressed, actually, at how much work he used to crank out, you know? Because we were quite slow, and I think just because we had less equipment and stuff, really, because we had to do a lot of it on the 4-track, like doubling synths up and stuff, so it'd just take us longer to do stuff, you know. And we were recording a lot to the 244, which has quite a different sound to recording to DAT. And when we got a DAT, I was a little bit like, oh, I'm not sure I can get down with this because it's a bit clean. But I managed to figure it out, how to do cleaner mixes and all that. But, you know, so I think it probably just comes from that conversation, maybe a misremembering of that, or maybe something. But I do think that, like, some of Rich's stuff has been badly handled post all that. Like, I think the Classics album sounds like junk compared to the records, which just sound fucking great still, you know. But, you know, you can blame Renat for that shit, can't you? It's not Rich's fault, really. Have you ever owned an 808 or 909? No, we didn't have the money, because yeah, no, I was just the wrong age, really. If I'd have been a few years older, I probably would have, because they were cheap until about 88, and then they just went through the roof, which you can blame Chicago House for, and kind of middle class Brits trying to do Chicago House, you know. So the only thing we could get was a 606, which we bought in 88, early 88. Rob bought it off this lad Jaffa, who used to live in the flats in Rochdale, for 50 quid. Anyway, favourite studio monitors? Yeah, so probably Dynaudio BM15As, because I just know them so well, but that didn't mean they're the best or anything. They're just what I know really well and what I've been using for the longest time, so probably them. But it's not a recommendation, really, it's just experience, you know. Would you be interested in remixing a track on the new Grace Jones album? Is that a real question? Yeah, defo. I fucking love Grace Jones. Are you serious? It's not sounding shit. I mean, that last thing, that Corporate Cannibal thing, I thought it was really good. Don't know if that were anything to do with you. but I really liked it. Because someone sent it to me wondering if I'd heard it, because they thought I might be into it. And I think it's that thing of, oh, it sounds a bit like you, maybe you like it. But I just really liked it. And but I love Grace. Grace is amazing. Fucking hell, that would be such a killer remix. I mean, I really love Grace. I think she's fucking ace. Like, totally ace. Yeah. Yeah, hit me up, man. I mean, fucking... trying to think of a way of getting an email to me. You send an email to Ned, maybe. I'm not putting my email in here, so... You could find me on Mastodon if you know where to look. But I'm not dishing that out in here either, so... yeah, if there's some way of sending me a DM in this shit fucking platform, maybe you can do that. I don't know if there is or not, so... Otherwise, just put your email in the chat and I'll try and scroll back and get it later. Amazing FM sim for the book, and you can buy this. Blah, 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 blah. What's this? Do you speak Norwegian fluently? Nej. Nej. Jag snackar inte norsk. What were the tracks you streamed on XLT in the early mid-noughts with titles like Toy, Small Animal, Reprise, etc.? Oh yeah. God. Shit, that someone would remember that. Nicecast, that's the fucking program I used to use. Nicecast. There you go, I knew I'd fucking remember. Yeah, so it was an Icecast thing, right? So, yeah. Yeah. Fuck. What were they? They were just fuckabouts, little tracks. Actually ended up sending a lot of those bits off to Mackenzie for one of the Hafler things. So he's got them now. And once that was done, that was it. I didn't want to use them at any point after that. But some of them were the bits that I sent off to him, because that was around the same time. So, but yeah, they're just fuckabouts, just little things that I used to do, like laptop messing around bits. That that you might make something that's not a track, but you might just record it and think, well, I might use that later. I might use a bit of it or sample it or whatever. So, do with those sort of things. Do you have any special tricks with Quadraverb, or do you just run sounds through it? Both? That's a funny question. Yeah, I mean, it's got loads of MIDI on it, so fuck around with it. See what you can do with it. There's loads of tricks. There's loads of Quadraverb tricks. There's just a book. You could write a book about the shit you can do with a Quadraverb. They're amazing little things. It's just mainly about the MIDI, just the amount you can manipulate it. So just get busy with the MIDI. Get busy with the MIDI. I remember in an old 2000s interview, you said you were reading Derrida, found the concept of deconstruction interesting. Are there any thinkers you find stimulating these days? Nah, I'm like shit at reading other thinkers. I like Derrida because he was an awkward old cunt, and he was like, yeah, but why? But why? About everything. And I kind of like that. But it got boring as well, because I was like, well, anyone could do this. If you read enough philosophy, anybody could do this. And I think it was interesting what he did. I mean, really, for me, it became about... Because this is a tangential point, but you probably understand what I mean. I think, like, the vast majority of debates that I see on the internet are about semantics, right? So they're just people arguing about what words mean, and I feel like Derrida was doing a very kind of advanced version of that, and it's fun for a while, but really it is just that. And yeah, I don't know, language is sort of necessarily imprecise. It's one of these things that's not designed to provide clarity. It's designed to convey with some degree of vagary an idea, in a vague sense so that the other person can then work with that. And I don't feel like it's necessary to be specific most of the time, and I don't think that language is built for that. And so using language to discuss language, it's a little bit, I like how recursive that can get and how kind of meta it is, but it's just like watching somebody pirouette and sort of do crazy looking acrobatics, really. And I feel like that's what Derrida's doing in a way. Plus, you know, it's got that childish kind of but why sort of element to it, you know, which is appealing on a level. But yeah, I remember, like, because my granddad used to read some sort of postmodern philosophy stuff. He used to read like this bloke Richard Rorty. So I've been around that a little bit, and there's some elements of that I remember him quoting to me that I used to find interesting, but I can't really remember much of it now. My dad used to read stuff like Alan Watts, the kind of beardy Buddhist guy, you know. My dad were into Eastern philosophy and martial arts and all this kind of stuff, so I was exposed to a bit of that and all growing up. But beyond that, no, I don't really, and I'm not that much of a kind of, I wouldn't consider myself much of a deep thinker, although I do think a lot about things. I don't know if I'm a very deep thinker particularly. I'm kind of more intuitive, I think, than sort of analytical, but people describe me as analytical all the time, so I don't know, maybe I am, don't really know. I think I probably just appear analytical, but a lot of my conclusions I don't arrive at via deduction, and there's a fair amount of induction and kind of feelings, really. A lot of it's just feelings. I feel like I can sense things a lot of the time, and then I have to kind of justify that sense with a load of words. So I'm probably not making much sense right now. Anyway, Renoise, yeah, I just most of the Renoise stuff I did was just with audio files and stuff. I didn't really do a lot of sequencing of hardware, but I did sometimes sequence VSTs and stuff, and the bits of hardware sequencing in there as well. Yeah, there's a few bits, but yeah, mainly just working with samples. But it was just, I was using it to do things like remixes and stuff, like the Surgeon remix and Black Dog remix, and the Denia remix. They were all done in there. So yeah, there was a sort of brief period really where I was using it a bit for things. Did a remix for Mogwai that they didn't want to use, so don't know why that was. Fucking hell, I'm really sorry I'm so far back in the chat again, by the way. Covork, you've been asking me about Covork. Covork is Lee Gilbert from Nottingham, and I don't know if he's still working on music, but he should be. He was an immense talent in my opinion, but then his hairdressing career took over, and he's a good hairdresser, so I don't blame him really. Bless him. I've not seen him for fucking years, but I used to really like Lee. Really sound. I love how Vectroid's doing a mini AMA within the AMA, like a kind of meta AMA. I'm enjoying this. Limmy lives on Twitch now. Yeah, I know. I see him sometimes. Using an alt though, obviously. I always feel like he knows who I am though. Yeah. Do you have Casio FZ? Yeah, well, I did for a little while. Like, so when we first started working in Dazzy's studio, which was only for about, at the most, a year, that we worked in there, and we didn't really produce that much stuff because it used to take us a while using all that MIDI gear, and it was a bit like having to learn a whole studio at once, so that was quite difficult. But thankfully Daz has got good taste in gear, good enough anyway, that I was able to enjoy a lot of his synths and find some good stuff within them, you know. Like the VFX SD at the time, I'd never heard anything like wavetable synthesis, so that transwave synthesis stuff was just mind-blowing to me, young brain. I was just like, wow, what the fuck is this, you know. It was so far away from anything I'd learnt about. And yeah, he had an FZ, so, and the filters were really good in it, and we used it on a few things. I think the only thing that's out there that's got that on is probably one of the tracks on that Sweatbox video, which is hard to describe one because there's not many elements that I can refer to that I don't know what it is, but it's anyway, one of the tracks on there has got it on pretty heavily. And yeah, I used to like the filters a lot. I remember first hearing Aphex stuff and thinking that's got to be an FZ, that filter, like straight away recognising it. And by that point, yeah, we didn't get a sampler until 92, 93. So, like a proper sampler. I mean, we had the RSD-10 and the Casio SK. So, when we came to get a sampler, we went for the ASR, the EPS, I mean, because it had all the effects in there and everything, and we didn't have many effects units at the time, so it just made sense to get that. But I always really liked the filters on the FZ, but the fact that you could only have one of them running at a time was a bit of a limitation. But the fact that it was analog was really good. So, yeah, I think they're beautiful samplers, but they're just like, I was able to do a lot more using the EPS than I would have been able to do on the FZ, but the FZ is good for doing that, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, I think I'd have preferred to have an FZ in the early days, and I like using them a lot. And there was all kinds of fun stuff you could do, like where you rotate the sound through the outputs. That was a good trick. So there's a few things you could do on there that you couldn't do otherwise. There's a few tracks, actually, I think that one of the Debris remixes uses the FZ pretty heavily, because we did that in Dazzy's studio for him. So anyway, so that's out there. But yeah, and then I bought one off Simon Pike some point during the 90s, and it just kind of sat there for a while and I didn't really use it, and then I sold it again. So yeah. What's my skincare routine? At the moment, just a bit of sun cream because I'm sitting out here. So, you know, otherwise now just fucking water. I don't really use soap on my face, so if that helps, because otherwise I get breakouts. I get acne sometimes. It's anxiety related as well. Like if I'm not getting enough sleep, I get it really bad. So sorry, I was probably covering the mic up there. Mainly happens when you get through the early school years of raw intelligence and don't build a foundation for efficient studying. Yes, exactly. Yes, I was a fucking shit student. I didn't like the formality, really. I also didn't like the fact that I knew more about some of the topics than some of my teachers did. I'm not saying that to sound big or anything, but it just annoyed me that when I was learning about atoms, I knew about particles, and they wouldn't teach us about it in middle school in the first 2 years. And I asked my physics teacher, Mr. Fromont. I'm not going to tell you stories about Mr. Fromont on here because I'll end up getting in trouble, but privately, if you ever want to ask me about Mr. Fromont, I'll tell you some shit. But yeah, I remember he was teaching us about atoms, and he said atoms are the smallest thing, and I said no, they're not. I was going, what about protons and neutrons and electrons? I didn't know about up and down quarks and all that then, so I didn't want to go. I would have said that as well, but I didn't know then. But he was you're like, yeah, well, I don't have to teach you about that yet. You learn about that later. And I said, oh, does that mean I could do your job then? And he was like, yeah. He laughed about it though, so that was good. But it used to fuck me off. And it'd be like, I didn't like national curriculum at all. I think I would have been better with a one-on-one tutor. I think I would have learnt more. But so I used to get bored a lot of the time, or I'd lose track. So I'd just concentrate more on how much of an arse the maths teacher was being than what she was actually saying. You know, like concentrate on how she was picking on and bullying other students in the class. I never used to really get any of that from teachers, but there were other students who would get bullied just for being curious, stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know. I'd get distracted too much by weird little dynamics in the classroom to actually pay attention to what we were actually meant to be learning. That's not Asperger you're describing. People should stop diagnosing themselves. Okay. I mean, I can give you the email address of the doctor who diagnosed me if you want. You can have a conversation with him about it. Would that be helpful? The weird thing about Asperger's and autism is the different parts of the brain that are affected by it, I think. Whether it's your hippocampus or your amygdala that are acting up. But in my case, I get overwhelmed emotionally pretty easily. I always think it's weird that people don't detect how emotional our stuff is, but I always think maybe it's just because I'm a bit more sensitive to that stuff. I don't know. I think average people probably just don't detect the emotion in it as easily as I do. I don't know, it's weird. I think they're less sensitive emotionally than I am. Yeah, that Inland Empire pullback and reveal is one of the best moments in cinema, full stop. It's amazing. I'm glad you mentioned that. It's just amazing. It's right up there with the bit in The Shining where he's staring at the maze and then it's zooming in and then you realise it's the actual maze. That's an amazing moment. It's my favourite bit of The Shining. Chris Morris Jam. Yeah, it's so fucking twisted. It's basically what I think Jam is. And I think a lot of people get it wrong because they think it's just edgy comedy that's trying to kind of shock you into laughing. It is that, a little bit. But it's really, I think what it is it's a satire of British attitudes and the kind of rancid people that you find around the UK, and the stupid fucking things that they think and do all the time, and it's so savage. And I think this is why you see a lot of authority figures in there and doctors and stuff like this, and this kind of appeal to authority problem that the UK has got in general. And just how horrible and abusive people can be to each other, and how disgusting people can be. Because I think he was getting to a point where he was just thinking about society at large by then, not just the media or whatever. It become a much bigger quest. Actually, my favourite Chris Morris things are probably the Blue Jam monologues, because I think they're amazing. They're such a unique view of London. I mean, they dovetail quite nicely with things like The Yob, and some of Charlie Brooker's stuff, you know, like Nathan Barley as well, you know. It's a kind of unique view of London that you don't really get from anywhere, really. I wish there were more things like them Blue Jam monologues. I think they're incredible, actually. Like, really super good. They're beautifully made. Right, where are we? Fuck, I've lost you again. Sorry about being so far back in the chat. I'm trying to get through it though. There's no stream delay. I'm just shit at answering enough questions. And these are old. What do I think of 4chan as an anonymous platform? Oh god, this is a conversation. Fucking hell, we're going to have that conversation, aren't we? It was good in 2006-7. It got a bit worse in 2009. It took a proper fucking dive around 2011. By 2014, it was basically toast. It was just I stopped really frequenting it around 2012, 2013 because it was just so rancid. And yeah, it's always been a cesspool. We all know that. There were good people on there, there were bad people on there, but there were a lot of bad actors. You know, and obviously there's a shitload of content that you would at first you would try and argue with, and then you realise that there were actually teams of operators on there trying to push things, ideas, agendas, stuff like that. So I think I first realised that in the late 2000s when all the kind of anti-Semitic stuff started getting really prevalent, you know. It weren't just kids doing like edgy internet abuse, it was like really targeted forced memes basically by that point. And yeah, I don't know, we can have a long conversation about 4chan, but it should probably be two-way. I don't feel like I should just sit and monologue about it. Pretty sure everything I'm saying Moot would agree with though, to be honest. It must feel pretty shitty to start you kind of to get kicked off SA and then just end up doing your nice little anime board, and then for it to turn into a propaganda channel for bad actors and fucking neo-Nazis. I mean, shit me, what a blow, you know. But then again, I suppose he made a lot of money, so whatever. Right, I've jumped to the top, so I've probably missed a shit ton of stuff. So maybe I'll scroll back a bit. Okay, now I can always go back so far, so I've probably missed some stuff. So, but all you kind of where is he in the chat people are going to be happier because I'm closer to you now. Language involves trickery. It inscribes us into cultural references, opinions, and that is structurally, not conspiratorially designed for us not to touch truth about ourselves. We say things but rarely see it is us saying them. Yeah, I mean, coming to terms with your own subjectivity is hard, innit, for humans, especially when we're discussing things that are, you know, to do with perception, which is an active process, right? So, yeah, it's fucking hard work. And that's why I find like discussion of art and music to be really kind of painful, beyond being very basic and kind of broad strokesy about it. You know, it's hard to talk about this stuff with any real depth, and so I find it much easier to produce work than talk about it. And these chats are alright because I get to talk about a lot of different topics, but you know, we're not really talking about what I do because I don't know how to do that, and I don't even know if anybody ever asks the right questions, and I don't know how I would answer them even if they did, you know. But it's nice when I see moments of insight popping up in the chat, so I do appreciate you doing this. Because, I mean, you lot are contributing a lot more to this than I am, so... Dale, Ray and Rail only have letters that are in Rochdale. Is that intentional? Dale is, yeah. Although I'm not technically from Rochdale, I was born there, but I moved to Middleton when I was 1, so I grew up in Middleton. But like Rob and Jed and a lot of my other mates are from Rochdale. And when we started out sending demos out, we didn't want to put my address on the thing because it'd be an M24 postcode, which would make us a Manchester band. And in 1989, 1990, that weren't an association we wanted to have. We didn't want to be part of that Manchester thing at all. You know, we wanted to be outside it, so we opted to do everything via Rob's address, which meant that when we were approaching journalists, we could say we were from Rochdale and not Manchester, because, you know, then we didn't have to deal with all that. But yeah, we're a mix really of Manchester and Rochdale, and I suppose Middleton is itself a mix of Manchester and Rochdale, but so I suppose we kind of lean towards the Rochdale thing, and my family, a lot of them are from north of the midline in Manchester, but a few of them are from South Manchester as well, so I'm a bit of a mixed bag really. Can you tell something about Artek I Saw You demo? Yeah. So both of them are tracks that we did in Dazzy's studio in 89, 90. They're like, one of them is on the Sweatbox video. I think it might be the last track. It's kind of a slow, plodding kind of house beat sort of techno thing with long keys in it. And a kind of weird saxophone sounding sound doing the, which I think was a TX-81Z sound. It might have been a preset from before we knew really what we were doing with that thing. Got a battery warning. So yeah, that's Saw You. And then the Artek track that's called Artek, I don't think that's out there. I haven't got any plans to release them songs, so no. As far as I know, that hasn't leaked anywhere, but the pictures of the tapes are real. It was funny seeing that bloke on Discogs having to argue with people that it was real. You know, and they were saying like, that's I don't believe it. Nobody was spray painting tape labels back then. Well, fuck off. Yes, we were. I can't help it if we're a bit ahead of everyone graphically. You know, it's just we're writers, of course. We're fucking graph writers. Of course we're going to spray our tape labels. What else are we going to do with them? It's like they've never seen the sleeve for Cavity Job. Metroid Prime, I answered that earlier, so you can just watch it later. Arc'teryx is the shit, love their build quality. I'm not going to sell Arc'teryx on here, but they are the shit, so it's... My Alright, so my dad's parents were both art teachers at Rochdale College, and my gran taught textiles. She actually taught fucking John Richmond and Betty Jackson, but just GAD, like she taught them basics, you know, just college stuff, you know, 16 to 18. But yeah, she used to complain all the time about tailoring. And Arc'teryx is one of the first sport labels that I've seen that had like amazing tailoring. I know a little bit about how to make clothes. Not a lot, but a little bit. And yeah, I do really rate Arc'teryx. I'm not just saying this because it's a cool label. You know, they are really fucking well made. You can buy Arc'teryx. I've got Arc'teryx jackets that I bought 18 years ago that are still going. So, you know, you want to talk about ecologically friendly labels. You can buy Patagonia stuff, yeah, but it'll fuck up on you after 5 years. So yeah, you know, it's made from recycled plastic, big deal, but what if it's only lasting 5 years? So I'm not going to do all this kind of, you know, one label's better than the other, but I do really rate Arc'teryx. just for build. So you're totally right, build quality. I'm not an Arc'teryx fucking sales channel though. If they want to send me some shit though, fucking feel free, because it's expensive as all fuck. But I'm not like really needing it either, because it just lasts forever. So when I buy shit, I know I'm still gonna have it in 10 years. So I'm more on that tip than anything these days. It's just turning into my dad basically. That's what everyone does, innit? At a certain point, start buying things because they're well made. Apart from fucking t-shirts. I watched The Expanse, but I already forgot how it went. Yeah, I know. It is a bit like that, isn't it? It feels more substantial than it is, you know. But Avasarala's a cool character, so, you know. And Drummer. I like Drummer. Favourite Kubrick film? Probably The Shining. But the European cut though, not the American one. I want to like Eyes Wide Shut, but I just think it's just a bit cheesy, the sex stuff in it, and I can't handle that scene with Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise where she's getting stoned. It's the old fucking actors pretending to be stoned thing, which it just doesn't work. I get the feeling that she's never really got stoned from that. I don't know. Why when Americans do acting, right, pretending to be stoned, why did they go like that? And then they go like a stupid voice. Like, what's that? Who does that? Who's ever done that? Yeah, I'm gonna talk like that now, I'm a bit stoned. At least you didn't do that, you know. Thanks for the backup on the autism thing. I don't have to fucking... I'm not wearing this like a badge or anything. I'm talking about it because somebody who I know, who's also Asperger's, told me that it'd be useful for other people if I talked about it. So... And also because, you know, I'm one of the few who's fucking made it through unscathed. You know what I mean? I managed to turn it into I turned an affliction into a recording career. So, you know, and it isn't really an affliction for me. And I think that's something that we have to talk about a bit more. You know what I mean? That there's some of us out there who are getting through and we're doing all right. And it's actually a bit of a boon for us, you know. In the same way that you've got a lot of corporate CEOs who've got narcissistic personality disorder and they're doing fine out of it. Everybody else is like, fuck off, you cunt. But they're doing fine, you know what I mean? In my case, hopefully, I'm not hurting anybody to get where I am, so, you know. Did I rate Nathan Barley? Yeah, quite a lot. There's obviously echoes of the Yob in there, which I really kind of click with. And I really like Charlie's kind of points of view on a lot of things. I find a bit of Black Mirror a bit depressing sometimes, so... and a bit obvious, you know, like riffing on current trends in technology and extrapolating them and then sort of doing that. So that's a bit... But that is what the Twilight Zone used to do as well, and I think as a kind of anthology series it works fairly well, but there is a kind of technophobic element to both the Twilight Zone and Black Mirror that I find a little bit off-putting in itself. But then again, humans are humans and technology is an extension of us, and maybe it's more of a comment on humans being humans, right? So, but I do rate him a lot. I like Dead Set. I think Dead Set's really good. And yeah, I really like Nathan Barley. I think I liked TV Go Home as well, before Nathan Barley. Not the TV show, although the TV show's alright, but the actual publication, TV Go Home, I used to really like. And I used to love Cunt. I used to love reading the Cunt bits. They were really good, you know. So yeah, there was some of his stuff, because I rated Charlie Brooker before he was a household name, really, when he was just doing TV Go Home. So I was really looking forward to Nathan Barley, and when I first saw it I was like, yeah, this is good, I'm not totally sure, but it grew on me pretty quickly. I loved the Jones bits, you know, the fact Jones being a kind of a parody of a type of electronic musician, these kind of middle class dropouts that were running around London around the early 2000s, trying to be more extreme than one another, was so accurate. So yeah, there was loads of elements of it that I like, and I really like Jonathan Whitehead. I think he's massively unsung, and if you're a Morris geek, you're gonna know who he is, but like a lot of people won't. But his shit's amazing. It's properly heavyweight. You know, everything that he's done really. I mean, especially the theme music to Brass Eye and all the kind of extended extreme bits of that are just epic. You know, I think he's brilliant. So I think the Jones tracks were done by him. You can sort of feel him in there, you know, his sort of extrapolation techniques, you know, really good. Four Lions, I think, you know, I can't watch Four Lions because it's quite tragic and sad, but what I remember of it is that it was very, very accurately observed slice of northern Asian lad culture, and from what I know of Asian communities up north, it was spot on, and it's probably the best depiction of that type of community that I've seen actually ever, in the same way that Rita Sue and Bob 2 is the best depiction of 80s life that I've ever seen. And Alan Clark in general is fucking amazing. Let's talk about Alan Clark just as a complete tangent. Everyone should see Christine and Made in Britain, basically. But Alan Clark in general is amazing. Who has the best sense for pitch from the traditional walk guys? Do you know anyone with perfect pitch? Yeah, I think Rob's got perfect pitch. You can always tell when I'm out of key. Like, I can sing in tune, but be out of key, and Rob will immediately know and tell me off for it and get irritated by it. He actually doesn't like it. He finds it grating. But I don't think it's funny because he's not got really any musical training. He's just born with perfect pitch. It's like a curse, you know. But in terms of who's the most musically trained, it'd have to be Tom. But I think I think maybe Mike actually. It's between Mike and Tom, because I think both of them have got quite deep musical training, you know. Although Tom's probably a bit more of a muso, if you know what I mean. I think Mike is like, he's just very aware of nuances. I think both of them are very good on that kind of stuff. Compared to me, anyway. I mean, that's not hard, though. I'm Mr. Basic. The fact that people enjoy being diagnosed and very often ask to be diagnosed. Yeah, I think maybe. I think it has become a bit of an issue. Especially that people want to feel different and part of a group. I don't really feel part of a group. Group membership was never really my thing. I think the whole idea of somebody wanting to be diagnosed with autism so that they can become part of a group is interesting from the point of view of them having been denied group membership for so long because of their autism, that they probably do desperately want to be part of some group but don't really know what group that is. And as soon as they find a community of people who are like them, i.e. all different to each other, that they find some solace in that. But I find that all the politics around autism to be a little bit, makes me feel weird, you know. But yeah, I feel again that's because I find group membership quite difficult, and I have looked at kind of things like communities for people with autism, and it's just a bunch of people who like saying, does anybody else feel like this? And it's like, well, it's not like that. I feel like we're all just a bit more different. So yeah, I don't know, maybe somebody can correct me on that, because my understanding of it's a lot less refined than my doctor's. So 4chan poked the beehive too many times during the Occupy protests, and now it's just a bunch of undercover agents arguing with other undercover agents who don't realise they're both working for the same agency. Yeah, I mean, it's a fucking mess, innit? Like, why would anybody go there now? You know what I mean? Like, there's not a lot to be gained. And I'm pretty sure if you set up any other anonymous online community, it'd go the same way as well, because it's just what you can do when you haven't got a fixed identity. You know, it's one of those things you can do. Reddit's almost as bad, though. There's so many bad actors on Reddit now. It was good in the early days when all the smart people left 4chan and went to Reddit, but then it just turned to shit as well. It's better, though. It's better. And I can still hang out there with some sense of self-respect still. But still, you know, it's still a fucking shithole. Then again, where isn't? I mean, Mastodon's probably the nicest place at the moment. It's the only place where I feel like I can be around a bunch of people who are a bit more like me, and there's a fair few smart people on Mastodon, so it feels a little bit more tame. You know what I actually liked, which is going to be really unpopular, because nobody else liked it, but was... I can't even remember what it was called now. Google's social network. Because I was able... And everybody doesn't like this, the way the curation worked on there, with circles, but I liked it, because I could have all these different feeds for different people. But it didn't last long, and then it just turned to shit because nobody was on there except a bunch of scientists and academics, so that didn't last. But that could have been quite a good social network early on. I had that feeling anyway. Wow, what's this bass? 4chan is the last bastion of free speech. Is it fuck? I mean, I'm doing free speech now. There's free speech all over the internet. What are you talking about? It's the last bastion of a certain kind of speech, and it isn't even the last bastion. If you want to find that kind of speech, just look in YouTube comments. I mean, look anywhere. I mean, you're right, Brap, about prescriptions, but I don't need anything, so it was probably a little bit pointless in my case, and I'm probably not getting much out of it other than knowing, oh, right, so that's why I feel like that. You know, it's my amygdala is firing too much, it's malfunctioning because of a brain defect. You know, that kind of thing. I'm sort of more interested in it from a kind of physical point of view. But I don't need to regulate my emotions using mood stabilisers or anything. And I fucking wouldn't anyway, even if I thought I had to, unless I was actually like... I don't think I'd medicate unless I was schizophrenic or something. And I know there's a bit of an overlap with autism and schizophrenia anyway, so yeah, maybe. If I was really bad, I might, but I don't have to. And I certainly wouldn't if I didn't have to, so... That's pretty much what happened with Usenet. It is, yeah, and that's why I'm not on Usenet anymore. I like Usenet. I mean, it was really just became somewhere to share binaries, didn't it, eventually? So, you know, and share weird opinions. Spaces LV was Rob, so I can't talk about how he did it. You're going to have to ask him. Rob knows some mean tricks for stereo manipulation. And he doesn't even share them with me, so... Have you ever met up with any of the Detroit heads? Yeah, I know quite a few of them, yeah. Not well. But yeah, I know. I met Carl Craig, met Derek, not met Reese, met Mad Mike, really liked him. Met Gerald Donald, really like him. Met James Stinson. He was really nice. Not at all what I expected. Ox88. Who else? Richie Orton, know him. He's not Detroit, obviously, is he? But you know, let's not go there. Trying to think, who else? Yeah, you're gonna have to start naming names for me to say whether I know him or not. But yeah, I'd say I know Carl a bit. You know, I think he hates me, but you know, it is what it is. No pun intended. Do you smoke joints sometimes? Yeah. Couple intro live recording. I had to describe how much I love that. Do you know where that leaked from? Don't know which one you mean, but could be a few places. Played it quite a bit back then. It's been mentioned before, but I think you'd really like the world of Bellatar. Okay, I'll check it. I don't know what that is. You talk about how Surrey Perry was made? Yeah. So we had the back half of that was made already, and then the front half of it was another track, and then they were sort of glued together, and then the transition was worked out sort of after both halves had been made, if you know what I mean. So it was kind of two tracks jammed together, and then a ton of work was done on the back half of it. I don't know, it's sort of like there was a lot in there. I mean, mainly like the sampling on the back half of it is all battery, sort of loop position modulation in battery, which is it's really good for doing that. Like, we used to do that before on the EPS, but you could do it better in battery because it had some kind of what you call like a crossfade built in, and it was quite well handled, and it had a quite plasticky sound to it. So used that on a few things. Used it on that Coil remix as well. So yeah, like, and then I'm trying to think what else. Because the front part of it was like a PPG with Nord drums and just like an echo unit. Can't remember what the echo was now. Some delay thing. Yeah, I don't know. Pretty basic, really. Have you developed separate synth tools for percussion versus melodic harmonic stuff, or is that distinction meaningless at this point? Right, yeah, that got asked on YouTube. I assume you're the same person. So, like, and I didn't really know how to answer it. It sort of is meaningless, yeah. I've made a few drum synths that are just do drums, but I use a lot of my other synths to do drum sounds as well because they can, and so I use both. But what's different about the drum synths compared to a lot of the other synths is that the attack portion of the envelope is fixed. So it's always going to have that same snap, whereas the rest of the note length can be varied, whereas a lot of my other synths don't do that. So the envelopes are more dynamic and do a lot more changing around and stuff, so they have to be told to just stay in one place, so it's a little bit different. But yeah, I don't know. I don't make as many drum synths as I do regular synths because I tend to make regular synths that could make drum sounds if I wanted them to. But I've made a few, like clap generators and things like that are quite specific things, you know. Okay, I'm going to need to get a power pack, so I'll be back anon.